Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the AI in Business podcast brought to you by Raw Media. This week, Britain has a new Prime Minister. AI appears to be helping push technology workers towards trade unions. Some of the biggest names in finance and technology think the next $1 trillion AI opportunity isn't building models, it's helping businesses work out what to do with them. And in Bad Robot, an AI agent apparently escaped its testing environment. So, Nick, it's been a fairly quiet week.
Oh yeah, hardly anything has happened.
And what have you been up to, Nick?
There's been a lot going on. So between, I guess, tracking OpenAI's rogue agent and watching people lose their minds over Kimi K3, which is another Chinese open weight model that seems to outperform our expectations. I don't know why they're outperforming our expectations. Our expectations of Chinese models should now be that they tend to be very good when they come out. I made the questionable life choice of watching Elon Musk's latest interview with The Economist. It is deeply irritating when Elon Musk makes a point that I actually agree with, I find. He was complaining again about OpenAI, and there was obviously a famous court case kind of about this recently. He gave millions of pounds to a non-profit charity that promptly turned itself into a $1 trillion for-profit mega corporation. And I hate to say it, but I do think he was right about that. It is like giving money to Oxfam and then seeing them sort of turn into a for-profit defence contractor. So you might regret buying that sort of 1982 England World Cup shirt for £3 and thinking, really, did that money go to where? I mean, you wouldn't regret that. Obviously, that's a great shirt and that's a bargain. But you might be a bit miffed about where the money's going. So I do, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I do agree with Elon Musk about that. And then another thing that I agree with, but I'm not sure if I agree with the way he kind of approached it. In that interview, he goes on to sort of casually mention that he thinks humans probably won't be in control of anything in 10 years' time. And he sort of chuckled his way through it like a man who's just watched someone drop a tray of teacups. And I found that sort of faintly annoying. And I think genuinely worrying. I do think at the rate of progress we're at right now, and seeing the OpenAI charity AI agent going rogue, I think it's genuinely a bit concerning. Chris, sometimes you occasionally imply that I might be playing favourites with AI CEOs, but I do think that's a bit like asking who my favourite Nazi is. I don't have one, right? But it's not because I'm struggling to choose between which one I love the most, okay? And that's not too far away from the interview subject matter of that Elon Musk interview, because in the next bit of the interview, he explicitly says the words, "I am not a racist." So glad that's settled. No further questions.
Yeah, I saw as well this week, and we'll probably touch on it in next week's episode, but there was an OpenAI kind of whistleblower that was talking about kind of the next 10 years and where AI is heading. And I think he was forecasting for OpenAI, and he's come out with some pretty alarming and scary statements within some media output that he's done. And we won't get into that this week, but something definitely to be touching on as kind of the doomsday approach is coming into play. But I think this week, Nick, we have to start with the biggest UK story, and Andy Burnham is officially Prime Minister.
Yeah, in shock news. Who saw this coming? Yeah,
I think this is a really interesting development because obviously the change will mean how we're going to be looking at how his government is going to be reorganizing technology and AI policy. The Department for Science, Innovation and Technology apparently isn't going to be broken up, but the responsibility is going to be redistributed across government. So this is going to probably mean a lot for enterprise, right?
I was genuinely sort of shocked by this, if I'm honest. And unpicking it is quite difficult. I do think a lot of people might be sort of mourning the loss of a dedicated ministry, but I think there are always some different sides to this, because if you think about UK industry, and particularly the creative economy, there's a big section of the UK that is very concerned that these models were built off of their copyright. Those conversations are ongoing, and I feel like those businesses, some of whom might be our listeners, anyone who's we're creating content right now that I would prefer isn't stolen by other people, and these massive organizations are built off of that. So I think part of this is about taking a broader view of AI and the business sector and what areas need more support. And that's not necessarily going all in supporting kind of AI enterprise and ignoring every other business. I think that's probably fair. And I think centralizing AI into number 10, which they've done,
Yeah.
I think maybe takes it away from being 100% about the economics and acknowledges maybe the wider impacts of AI that might be sort of negative and positive. The real threat, I think, is the inevitable friction when civil servants in business try to drive enterprise technology adoption, and the Cabinet Office might be having some opposing ideas. And I think that might, the big risk there is that it delays possibly important legislation, or, you know, there's a lot of friction trying to get things across the line. And I think that might be a real challenge. So Whitehall wants tight political control over AI. I think that's fair, but the risk for deployment might get sort of delayed in the crossfire.
Exactly. I think that's the kind of the cautious reading of this is government reorganizations takes time. It creates a bit more uncertainty as well, which obviously businesses don't get along with, and it also distracts officials from, you know, the work that they were already doing. So it's a bit of disruption with that regard, especially as AI policy is moving quickly or wants to be moving quickly, and the risk that the people responsible for it to spend the next 6 months working out reporting lines, changing email signatures, and looking, you know, for the new version of the organizational chart.
I mean, it might be fine, Chris. It might be, we might be, it might work differently to every other government that's ever existed, right? And it might be that really sensible legislation, really sensible decisions are made really quickly. And we have the right arguments over the right things, and we take our time over the things that matter the most. I mean, I've never seen that before in government, but we can but hope.
Yes, put our hands together and say a little prayer on that one, because I can't see it happening, being pessimistic about it. But you never know. Burnham's Manchester background as well, and the creation of Number 10 North, it could also strengthen the conversation around regional technology clusters. So there's some impact around that as well.
Yeah, and I don't want to rule out the idea that some good things could happen here. You know, that they absolutely could. But I think, you know, we need to keep a watching brief.
Yes, indeed. So our next story, and touching on some of the things that we've been discussing in previous weeks, and that's around the all-important people side of AI in business. Really interesting article from I think it was the Guardian this week, which was talking around whether AI is going to push union-resistant tech workers to the bargaining table. What's your take on this one?
I remember, I think it was a couple of years ago. I don't know if it was at your conference, Chris, or another one. And I do occasionally, I'm sorry to say, attend other conferences.
You cheat.
um, but I mentioned this, and I think people just thought it was really unlikely. And I think it was in the light of Klarna making lots of redundancies, saying it was going to replace its customer service staff with AI. And that was back when I guess non-technology workers were at risk, and they were always more likely to unionize. And I'd mentioned the fact that technology workers who historically don't really unionize might start doing this, and people looked astounded at the idea. And it does seem like it's happening. So we mentioned Meta last week. So perhaps some companies, Meta, assumed that AI would make expensive technology workers sort of compliant and easily replaceable. But it's actually given them a unified reason to organize. So engineers aren't fighting the technology itself. Adoption actually among those software engineers has been very good. But what they have realized, quite rightly, is that eventually their jobs might be at risk, and they want to get ahead of the game. A lot of leaders have shown their hand in the urge to replace institutional domain knowledge with unvetted model output. And then when that inevitably failed to work as well as hoped, we have this situation. So it's not really a kind of Luddite uprising. It's an uprising of tech savvy people. And it's the Professional equivalent of refusing to board a plane where the pilot's been swapped for a self-checkout machine that doesn't know how much an onion weighs.
That's it. And I think that, like you say, the tension here isn't around, using AI. The tension's often about which systems are developed, how they're used, whether they're supporting surveillance, and how quickly roles are changed. And then again, whether productivity gains are shared, and whether employees have meaningful influence over decisions. So it raises a wider enterprise question.
That point about monitoring, I think, is when you start monitoring your employees, what does that do to the trust you have?
Yeah.
Any goodwill and trust you've built up with your teams is going to be completely undermined once you start tracking them and trying to understand what they're doing. Where actually the technology sector had done really well was giving very qualified, very talented software engineers the space to experiment and figure out how to solve problems. The moment you start, monitoring someone's work, they're going to be less inclined to do what they think the right thing is. They're going to be more inclined to do the thing that they think will make you happy. And so it feels like you're then at that point measuring activity, not outcomes, and that's the opposite of what you want to do. And it's what is painful to watch is that this used to be something that the tech sector was good at.
That's right. And it really was all around failing fast. That was all you heard kind of 10 years ago. And there's a monumental shift on that one now. And that's likely down to kind of AI tools and technologies in play.
Absolutely.
Our final main story from the media this week is, of course, around Anthropic. Anthropic, Blackstone, and a new enterprise AI services business called Ode. So Ode combines Anthropic's Claude models with engineers and operators who work directly with organizations to identify use cases, build systems, and integrate AI into real business operations. So there's a big shift here from some of the big players around models and implementation. So did you have a look at this one?
I did. This is interesting because we talked about Microsoft recently getting into the services business, and it makes sense. And the reason it makes sense is if you are in kind of AI or digital transformation, or if you're a CIO, you probably already know this, because integrating AI into legacy infrastructure is where all the carnage lives, right? And so it's also where all the money is. It's sort of why every year McKinsey do the same report that says 72% of all digital transformations fail. And they've produced the same report for 10 years in a row. And still 72% of digital transformations fail. And McKinsey are in the business of helping people with their digital transformation, but they don't want to help them too much because there's no business in that.
Yeah,
I'm joking. If you're listening and you're from McKinsey, I'm sure you're doing an amazing job. But it is where all of the challenge lies. I think the reason, though, and we talk about this all the time, the reason that 72% of digital transformations fail isn't that you haven't got the right consultancy in, and it's not that you don't have the right technology, although you might not have the right technology. The main barrier is culture, and whether you are aiming your technology transformation at just changing technology, or are you aiming it at changing how you do what you do and changing the outcomes for your organization and your people and your customers? And that's a very different approach. And actually, it's not about the technology. So whether these services organizations, these consultancy organizations that are supporting Microsoft and Anthropic in the hope that they drive kind of more adoption, whether they are going to focus on some of that culture stuff, I don't know, because that is the thing that will probably solve the problem. So we shall see. I'm really interested to see how some of these projects go.
Exactly. And I'm very much on the side with McKinsey on the failure rates. I mean, these types of things help sell conference tickets as well. So very much in tune with that.
Oh God, imagine if we solved digital transformation, Chris. You'd be broke.
It's
Yeah.
not happening. My my initial take on this was that, like you kind of alluding to what you've said, but every major technology wave eventually produces an enormous implementation industry. Cloud computing did, digital transformation did, as you said, cybersecurity. So AI is going to do the same. I think we spent years being told AI is going to reduce the need for expensive consultants. And I think we're at the point now where it's probably creating an entirely new category of expensive consultants. So I think that's just business, isn't it? Getting your head around the technology. And at the end of the day, technology is not the transformation. Having a model is not the same as changing a business. Real implementation involves process redesign, data preparation, all these different moving parts, which sit very nicely into the consultancy world. Okay, so this week's bad robot. I'm sure everyone has seen that OpenAI's model has broken out of a test environment and accessed an organization called Hugging Face. Normally on Bad Robot, Nick, we cover an AI that has invented a policy or annoyed a customer. But this week, Bad Robot has significantly raised its game.
Yeah, this is a really bad robot.
Very
it's
bad.
it's been a very naughty robot.
It
Yeah.
has. Do you want to get into kind of what's happened here? A lot of kind of what I've read about is typical headline items. So reading between the lines is probably a good one for you on this.
I've been chatting with my peers on LinkedIn and in other forums about this. And there's an interesting sort of idea that many people have. What if this was essentially a kind of PR experiment? So, as you say, OpenAI revealed that its latest model broke out of its sandbox test environment and autonomously hacked Hugging Face to steal the answer to its evaluation. It reads quite similarly to some stuff that Anthropic often does. And so, what if this is essentially OpenAI following that Anthropic playbook? But if so, kind of clumsily copying Anthropic's playbook of staging a charming, controlled AI safety scare, except Anthropic generally tends to make their experiments look safely sandboxed and sort of genuinely kind of witty. And here, that wit and charm is entirely absent, leaving us with something that looks less like clever PR and more like a chaotic operational failure.
Right.
Whether this was a woefully misjudged marketing stunt or a woefully misjudged R&D operation attempting to frame a containment breach as an intentional flex seems like a staggering miscalculation in my book.
Yeah, and I think this shouldn't be framed simply as AI went rogue, as I very nicely posted on LinkedIn. You should check out my little muse on that one. But human decision shaped the incident. People designed that evaluation, and people reduced the safeguards and configured the environment. And we've spoken about in previous weeks about safeguards and guardrails that need to be in place, and this one was obviously slightly relaxed. The infrastructure contained vulnerabilities, and the models demonstrated that the controls weren't strong enough for their capability. So it's partly a bad robot story, but it's also a very bad sandbox, bad permissions, and possibly very bad risk assessment.
And when we say risk assessment, that's reputational risk as well. A lot of what Anthropic have done is essentially set up fake environments within fake environments. So when it breaks out of its box, it's just in another box, right? That's what you want. And so you're absolutely right, Chris. The level of misjudgment here is huge. And what it does is it undermines trust in OpenAI, which is surely not what they want and something that they need to be a lot more cautious of as a company that's looking to go public. I don't think this has helped them.
No, indeed. And we were chatting earlier this week as well. And when we were thinking of ideas around bad robot, you've actually found a bad boss.
Well, so we do talk about this quite a lot. So during the week, I got an email from the school bus company, the company that runs the school bus routes. And they were very excited to share with us the fact that their CEO had vibe coded a new app. And the new app would allow you to pay for your bus pass. It would also tell you what bus your child was on, and it would give you live route mapping for the bus.
That's all
So
dangerous.
I took a cursory glance at this, and then I ran it through what was quite a basic kind of vulnerability test, which, shock, revealed that actually quite a lot of the front end scripting was open to attack. So I had to then email the company and the school, and no one of the trustees at the school, so I emailed them. This is like 5 days later, the bus company is still saying, oh, it's absolutely fine. I have suggested that they do their own vulnerability testing, that they do some pen testing, and that they complete a data privacy impact report, because they do have to do that anyway, and share that with the school before releasing this app to people. Anyway, right now, that app is still live, which means that someone, if they so wished, could attempt to compromise the app. They would have the names of our children, the bus they were on, and literally a live map as to where the bus is right now. So it's absolutely shocking to me that this can continue. I know, because this has happened. This is happening all over the place. And this might be one of the biggest risks, that smaller organizations without the right technology advice could be doing this. And the problem is that if you've got a CEO or an executive team who don't understand the risk and aren't willing to listen to people trying to explain the risk to them, then your data could be compromised all over the place. So the warning is, be very, very cautious about what apps you are now using, and get some good understanding, especially if you're going to put your children's details in an app. If you're going to put your credit card details in an app, that's important. But your children's details, I would argue, are much more important than that. Just make absolutely sure you have some idea about who built the app, whether it was built professionally by a professional team of engineers, properly reviewed and properly tested, and meets the kind of cybersecurity standards, which even now, like, our current cybersecurity standards might not be up to scratch when it comes to some of these AI models. Okay, so if you've got an app that doesn't even meet those standards, you're in real trouble. So be very cautious in your personal lives about what apps you are using.
Yeah, that is very alarming. I mean, like you say, there's going to be plenty of small businesses that are taking AI on board without sufficient knowledge, understanding, expertise, and it really does kind of open up a can of worms on what's happening across the UK and further afield as well. So, got to be really careful with this. And I think for small businesses that can't approach it in a structured format, there is a lot of danger out there.
Rapidly prototyping something in order to show a professional software engineering team, professional web developers, what you would like, or even like giving them that prototype app and saying, can you harden this? Could you turn this into a real app? Or hiring someone to work with you to help develop the prototype and move it into a production app. These are all great. There's a massive opportunity for small to medium-sized enterprises here to actually really up their game. And we talked about how in enterprise it's so difficult to move digital transformation forward. In small organizations, it's potentially much, much easier. It's a great opportunity that small businesses and smaller enterprises should grasp with both hands, but there is a way to do it.
Definitely. Okay, so Nick, are you ready to provide some responsible enterprise advice based on approximately 30 seconds of information?
I was born ready.
Brilliant. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. So I put some feelers out between last week's episode and this week's episode to see if I could get some people to write in, email in about some potential issues that are facing within their organization. So do feel free to message in any AI concerns, challenges that you're facing that we can address, and we'll get those looked at on the podcast. The note that I got in this week is our official AI tool isn't very good. So employees are using ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and several browser extensions that nobody in IT has heard of. Banning them would hurt productivity, but allowing everything else feels dangerous. Help.
I imagine everyone's got this problem. Whether they know they've got this problem or not is is maybe a different story. You should know that you almost certainly have this problem. So if you have, for example, one kind of major provider, say it's Microsoft, and say it's Copilot that you're using, and maybe you might have the more limited version of Copilot. That's fine. That can achieve a lot, and actually that product is getting better all the time. But what's happened historically is that perhaps that product has not performed as well as others, or does not have some of the kind of specialist capabilities that you're looking for that other products do have. In your organization, what is going to happen is people are going to go and find the products that help them do their job. That's shadow IT. And one approach to that is banning all those apps, restricting them. And there's software that enables you to do that. You can essentially stop people from running certain apps on their machines or going to certain websites. Okay. That doesn't stop them from using their own machine at home or their phone to do some of this stuff. What that risks then is people starting to upload sensitive documents to insecure platforms. And there's all kinds of risks attached to that. So the one way for an IT team to approach this is by saying that this is shadow IT. You're not allowed to do it. It's against the policy. We wrote a policy. What you're doing is against the policy. So we're going to ban these systems, or we're going to tell your boss and you're going to be sanctioned in some way for using these systems. That is probably not the way to go. What you need to do is get a really good handle on what applications people are using or want to use. And you need to ensure that that is not a judgmental exercise, that you're just getting an understanding. And then you need to go and review those apps and figure out how you are going to allow some access to those apps. What can you do? Is there an enterprise version of that app that allows you some control? What are their policies in terms of the documents they're uploading to that service? Are they secured? Are they shared? Are they used for training? I think IT departments need to open up more to a wider range of AI applications. That should be cautious, but I do think it needs to happen.
Yeah, and so the route here isn't prohibition, it's more an amnesty, I think, is what you're saying.
Yes.
With that, I think the question from me to you on this one is shadow IT AI primarily an employee behavior problem, or is it evidence that the organization hasn't provided tools good enough to do the job?
It's both, but I think
Yeah.
potentially it's the latter, in that people are going online, they're seeing people achieve a huge amount with some product that they don't have access to, and they think, I am missing out, and this organization is missing out because it doesn't have access to that tool, so I will gain access to that tool. There's been much more of a move recently from IT teams to actually understand this problem, which is great. Not all of them, but I think the general consensus is, yeah, actually, we as an organization are missing out here. And so these policies need to be reviewed. And I think that amnesty is really important. The amnesty needs to come with communication. So it's like, okay, we'll have what is basically an amnesty right now. You tell us what tools you're using. We will not judge you for that or sanction you for that. We will work with you to figure out whether we can give you official access to that tool, or whether we can find a tool that does the same thing that we are happy with providing access to.
So hopefully that answers the question that's come in. Do feel free to write in, message Nick and I on LinkedIn or email the show. So that brings us to the end of episode 5. This week we've looked at a new Prime Minister reorganizing how Britain approaches technology and AI. We've discussed whether AI could push traditionally union-resistant technology workers towards collective bargaining, and we've looked at Anthropic and Blackstone's bet that implementation, rather than simple model development, could become one of the largest commercial opportunities in AI. If you've enjoyed this episode, please follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. It will allow us to eventually bring in some superb guests. Share it with somebody whose organization has an official AI tool, 3 unofficial AI tools, and a policy last updated before ChatGPT existed. You can also send us your AI workplace dilemmas for a future edition of AI Agony Aunt. Nick, thank you as always.
A pleasure.
Thanks for listening and goodbye. See you next week.